Good morning, everyone, or I suppose afternoon, depending on where you are. It's still morning for me. Thank you so much for joining us today on our joint webinar. I am Gwen Preston of Resource Maven, and I'm joined, of course, today by Chad Peters of Ridgeline Minerals.
All right, thanks for having me, Gwen. Appreciate it. I'm going to walk you guys, for those of you who are not familiar with Ridgeline Minerals, I'm going to give a very quick breakdown on why I think we're doing things a little bit differently than some of our peers in Nevada, and some of the upside and an update on the projects that we're currently drilling right now. So quick cautionary statements. I will have a few forward-looking statements, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. So why invest in Ridgeline Minerals? We're a Nevada-focused junior explorer. We have a 116 square kilometer exploration portfolio across 3 projects in the Carlin and Battle Mountain Eureka Trends of Nevada. So I think going back to what you were saying, Gwen, about having multiple assets in a safe jurisdiction, that's exactly where we are with Ridgeline. We have 3 great projects. They each have their own exciting upside in their own right. And what 2020 is a very important year for testing all 3 of those projects through a phase 1, at the minimum, a phase 1 program, so that we can try to advance these projects to a decision point for 2021. So what really sets us apart, I think, something important to mention, is that I co-founded the company with the owner of a drilling company. So, our co-founder owns an RC drilling company. We're able to drill at a significant discount to market rates and our peers, which is a huge competitive advantage. Sometimes a great project, the only difference between a discovery and it fading into nothing can be the amount of steel that you get in the ground, and we're able to drill more feet with every more meters with every dollar than our peers. So we have an experienced management team. We have a lot of skin in the game. We own 17%. Myself included, I own 8% of the company. So I went without a salary for the first 14 months of the company and put 150,000 cash of my own money into every single round, every financing we've had. So we're all firmly aligned. We're out here to make discoveries, and we're really focusing on just completing systematic exploration across all 3 projects. So move into the next slide. So our team, a few things I want to mention. Myself and Mike Harp, we've been a part of over 5 million ounces of discovery in Nevada over the last 5-6 years. So we know what we're looking for. We both live down here, and we've surrounded ourselves with a great board and team to kind of support what we're doing here in Nevada. So could you go to the next slide, please, Gwen? All right, and from a cap structure perspective, as I mentioned, we have 17% insider ownership, really good mix of retail and institutional investors, partners, as well as pubco partners like EMX Royalty Corp, Vior, and Ethos. We have 48 million shares outstanding post-IPO in August of 2020, 3.3 million warrants and 3.3 million options and 6.2 million warrants. So what that leaves us is a very tight share structure with a lot of potential, I think, to move up if we have positive exploration results. And we have a cash position of approximately 5.5 million as of the end of August. So we're very well cashed up. We have enough money to complete all of our programs in 2020, as well as fully funded for 2021. So we're in a great position to go out and make a discovery. Why Nevada? I think for most of you, you're probably well aware that it's a world-class jurisdiction. And groups like Barrack, they've since done the Nevada Gold Mines joint venture with Newmont and are now doubling down on exploration across Nevada. So we think there's still a lot of upside. We founded the company based on exploring for deep exploration targets, and we think we're going to have some success. So next slide, please, Gwen. We have 3 projects, as I mentioned: Carlin-East, Swift, and Selena. And one thing I wanted to mention is, Carlin-East and Swift are high-grade underground targets. They're really what we raised the money on as a company. Probably, I think we introduced the project to Gwen actually about a year ago now. And that was clearly the what we felt was, the really huge upside for the company. But we also have a pretty balanced portfolio in that we added the Selena project as well, which is a shallow oxide target, and it's starting to show a lot of really exciting results. So in early 2020, we've completed 2 programs, and we're actually hitting some pretty exciting oxide gold silver. So we believe we're into an emerging discovery there, and we're going to be testing both the Swift and Selena targets this fall, and we're actually drilling Swift right now. So we'll go into Swift first in the next slide. And what I really want to mention with Swift, it's a huge land package. It's 51 square kilometers. High-grade target, very little drilling over the last 30 years. It was previously owned by Placer Dome, Barrack, part of the Barrack joint venture, the Cortez joint venture in years past. And we've been able to consolidate the land package. We have 3,000 meters planned for this year, fully approved exploration permit for up to 5 acres of disturbance. And we're only 10 kilometers downtrend of some of the biggest mines in Nevada. So if on the next slide, we have, what I really want to point out is, on the image to the right, you can see that all of these mines along the Cortez Trend, there's over 50 million ounces just scattered in that image alone. They're all clustered along a northwest trend at fault intersections. Well, the next structural block to the north of the pipeline deposit would be the Swift project. That would be the next structural intersection. So that's what we're testing right now at the Fallen City target. If you look to the image on the left, it's showing, very high arsenic, widespread arsenic anomalies across the entire project. There's one historic drill hole in 99-5A that was drilled in 1999 that hit 17 meters at 0.7 grams per ton gold, and it never got a follow-up hole. Now, for us, when we saw that, that got us really excited because that shows that there's already an active Carlin-type system at depth that de-risks the project significantly without even having to do a drill hole of our own. And what we did is we came in, we reinterpreted the geology, and we're now drilling holes 1 through 3. And I'll show on section AA prime here what has us really excited is that if you look here, we're currently drilling hole number 1, which is right over here in the Fallen City target. And what's really exciting for us is we intersected the Roberts Mountain Formation, which is one of the key hosts on the Cortez Trend, at 529 meters. So that is over 200 meters shallower than the intercept in hole MCK 99-5A. So what it shows us is not only is there already an active system, but we were able to track it up into much shallower rock. It matched what our geologic model suggested, both with our geophysics and our mapping. And we've hit multiple silica sulfide breccias pretty much as soon as we got into lower plate. We've hit multiple breccias between 558 meters and 610 meters. Of course, with any Carlin type system, you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? It's you don't know whether it's going to carry gold. That's up to the assay lab because it's microscopic gold that we're looking for here. But at the end of the day, we're very excited because we've hit the right host rocks. They're altered. And we're going to come back in. We're going to be moving in core rigs in the next 2 weeks. We're going to finish a few more pre-collars at hole 2 and 3. Now, what a pre-collar is we drill RC, which with our drilling contract, we can drill for incredibly cheap. We drill that through the white rock, which you can see is our upper plate. And then what we do is we case that hole with steel so the hole doesn't fall apart. And then we follow in with a core tail. The core tail allows us to get very high quality, both structural and geochemical data from the hole. And it's very trustworthy data. So one of the issues with deep drilling in Nevada, as you get deeper, you tend to get below the water table, and RC drill holes tend to have a bit of downhole contamination. It's different with every project, but you always have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, right? You know that you're hitting altered rock. What that gold grade is really tough to tell until you go in and you confirm it with a drill hole. And that's what we're doing now with core, is we're going in, we're finishing this RC hole right now. We'll probably finish it today. And then we're going to come back in. We're going to drill about 3,000 meters of core across 3 to 4 holes. And we're really excited to see what comes out of it. But I think from an early stage, when Gwen was saying, that testing your concepts, this is a huge win for us, I guess, from the perspective of we came in, reinterpreted the geology. What we've hit now matches what we expected to see. So it gives us a lot of confidence with our targeting and heading into to a bigger program. So yeah, so I guess next slide. We'll have more information coming from that, by the way. We'll probably have, because we're drilling core, I'd say that our drill results are probably going to be coming out in mid-November, late November. We'll start getting assays coming in. As Gwen mentioned, it's very, very slow at the labs these days. But we've actually been lucky enough. We get about 3 to 4 week turnarounds. We have a very good relationship with our lab, and when times were tough, we were still sending samples, so we're getting priority treatment, which is great. So we expect to still get pretty good turnarounds. So I want to mention the Selena project. Like I said, it's an oxide gold silver target, and our phase 1 and phase 3 programs highlight that we have significant oxide discovery potential here, and we're going to be doing a phase 3 program starting about October 20th. And that'll be about a 2,000 meter program to follow up on results from phase 2, which we released back in late August. So if you don't mind going to the next slide there, Gwen. So we have multiple targets in here on the project. It's 26 square kilometers. And just to note here, we're right by the Alligator Ridge, Bald Mountain, and Golden Butte mines. So there is active mining in the area, both historic and currently producing. And what we came in with our first phase in the spring, we came in and we trenched across some of these targets. You can look to the image on the right. We trenched up to 38 meters at 0.75, 50 meters at 0.64. And then we drilled with our phase 1 and 2 programs beneath those trenches and along strike to try to prove that there was, we could find even stronger mineralization at depth. So if you go to the next slide there, Gwen, we'll show cross-section AA prime here. And we're looking this is from our press release that we did in August. And we intersected oxide gold in 10 of 14 holes in our phase 1 and 2 programs. So we had a very high hit rate. Holes 13 and 14 were the first holes to actually test this juniper fault, which you can see is kind of the clustering of some of those grades on there. And I'll just mention that, we had up to 29 meters of 1.26 grams per ton gold equivalent, which equated, I believe that hole was 29 meters of 0.38 gold and 65 grams silver. So really great silver. We'd like to see the gold getting a little higher, get it up over half a gram, but very, very encouraging results for an early stage program like this. I mean, there hadn't been a drill hole on this project for over 20 years. And in our first 15 holes, 1,500 meters, we've been able to, I think, show that there's a lot of potential here. So the phase 3 program, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be testing these parallel structural targets across the Tyrant and Maximus faults, and we're actually getting into better host rocks as we head to the west. So the brown and the light blue, those are some of the best host rocks in the area. The brown unit hosts the Bald Mountain mine. What Fremont Gold is drilling right now, just down about 40 kilometers to the south, is all in that brown unit. So we have some pretty high hopes for testing this target. It also tracks out along one of our better geochem anomalies. So we think we're just starting to vector into some of the higher grade stuff, and we're excited to see what phase 3 brings. So we'll probably have results for that coming out again in mid-November. We'll get that hopefully going in the next 2 weeks. So Carlin-East is our last property. I'd say that probably it's what I raised the majority of our money on when we first founded the company, because it is a very core land position, 39 square kilometers, directly adjacent to the Gold Strike and Leeville complexes in the North Carlin Trend. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you why we're excited. So everything in the gray and white is our property package. And what you can see is in 2019, we drilled hole 1901. We proved that the host rocks were significantly shallower than previously thought. We hit lower plate host rocks at 790 meters. Historically, previous operators had thought maybe it was closer to 1,500 or 2,000 meters deep. So we were able to prove, that was a positive move for us last year. And now what we're seeing is things are getting very exciting in the North Carlin Trend. Barrack is very active drilling, and you can see that we have active drills along both margins of the edges of our property here, both along the Leeville corridor and close to the Wren and Banshee deposits. So we think there's a lot of upside at Carlin-East. It's a very, I think it's a quickly evolving story for us. And of course, since we're trying to focus on collecting as much data as possible, keeping them, minimizing risk to our shareholders, we're obviously going to see what comes out of these drill programs, see if anything positive, evolves out of Barrack's drilling, and use that to better target on our own projects. So we think that 2021 could be a very, very exciting year for Carlin-East, and we'll just hopefully see what comes out of these holes and go from there. So next slide, please. So just to finish off, one thing I really want to mention is we have a lot of catalysts coming up through the end of the fall here. We're drilling over 6,000 meters. We've allocated all of our drilling towards Selena and Swift for the remainder of the year. That's both a function of timing. We're starting to run out of season here. We are going to get snow probably late November, and it makes it difficult to complete drilling programs. So we're going to focus on positive results that we're seeing at Selena. We're already seeing some very exciting rock at Swift, and we hope to follow up with some great core drilling and really prove that there's something going on there as well. So it'll be, I think November is going to be really big. We're going to see results coming in mid-November and probably have that scattering all the way through December into early December for the company. So lots of catalysts. We're focused on making a discovery, and yeah, that's what I think. If we go to the next slide, I think the main thing to take away is we're fully funded to complete our activities. We got a great team that knows what they're looking for in Nevada and has had previous success, and we hope that we can prove that we're the next big thing in Nevada.
Thanks, Chad. That was a great run through of things. A few questions have come in. I did forget to specifically remind anyone in the audience, if you have questions, please enter them in the question box. I see them. I'm happy to pass those along right now during our question and answer period. I also have a few questions of my own that I can throw in. So I want to just take a little bit of a step back and ask a little bit about building the portfolio of projects that you have. And I think part of the reason for that is that I want to, I'm going to stop showing the screen so people can see us instead, I think. Oh, I hope that
my webcam was turned off the whole time. So.
That's okay. So yeah, so building the portfolio. So I talked about, you want to have a team with good technical competence. That's one of the ways to de-risk an exploration bet. And you want to have a good technical rationale for the targets on a project and for how a project is sort of how a portfolio is put together. And that's
Sure.
actually one thing that I really liked about Ridgeline right from the beginning. So can you just take us through that about, I mean, Nevada, maybe we'll leave why Nevada for a moment because I have a bit of a question about that afterwards. But once you got into the decision to focus on Nevada, how did you decide to focus on which kinds of targets?
Right. Well, fair enough. So it is tough in Nevada, right? Because it's such an endowed state that, no matter where you go, you're probably gonna find a rock that has some gold in it, Nevada, and it can be really exciting. So I think what we do when we're looking at projects is we're looking for really key structural indicators of you don't tend to have multi-million ounce deposits unless it's on a major structural trend. You can get all kinds of 500,000 ounce, million ounce deposits all over Nevada, right? But if you want to find a big guy like what along the Cortez or the North Carlin trend, you have to be on one of these northwest structural trends, and the interstructural intersections there. So what we were looking for is we really wanted to focus on. We felt the future of exploration in Nevada was going deeper. Most of the the shallow oxide stuff has been pretty picked through, and we're really excited about Selena, but we're also very cognizant of the fact that that isn't going to be a 5 million ounce gold mine, right? We know that. I'm not going to go out to shareholders and say it is, but it does have a potential to fall into that 500,000 million ounce category, which can still be very valuable, right? But what we really want to focus the company on is tier one assets. And to find those, you had to go deeper and you have to go into areas where people have already looked, maybe been looking with a bit of a different exploration model. And what we were able to do is we went into Carlin-East and Swift, which were both considered way too deep. And we used gravity, we used in the field mapping to actually go in and reinterpret the structural models. And we've now proved with our holes at Swift that both of those projects are significantly shallower than previously thought. Carlin-East was a 1,000 to 1,500 meter target, and Swift was considered an 800 to 1,000 meter target. We've come in, we hit lower plate at 800 meters at Carlin-East, and we hit it at 590 meters or 520 meters, sorry, in Swift. So that's well within striking distance for these companies in Nevada, Barrack, Dumont, Kinross, and with our drilling contract, it allows us to be even more aggressive with drilling them off. So I think what we really looked for is we thought, okay, it's tough to get a foothold in Nevada. The best way to go about doing that is to going into underexplored or misunderstood areas, picking that ground up, and then kind of, I think, reinterpreting the story, and that's what we've done. So that was our first step.
Gotcha, for sure. So, and for a little bit of context for people, when you talk about the deep targets and the Barrack and what they're drilling and why those things are tier one assets, can you capture a little bit about what Barrack is drilling that's right close to you? Just as an example, I think, because not everyone because we hear about splashy exploration news from junior explorers, but we don't hear as much about splashy exploration news from Barrack, because guess what? They focus on their mine. So give us a little rundown of what these guys are actually finding.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, like some of the results that Barrack is putting out, in the bottom of their Q2 financial reports, their quarterly financials are the kind of reports that would take other companies to the moon, right, as far as the stock price. And but they're just listing them in the bottom of their, oh, by the way, we actually happen to hit this as well. At North Carlin, for example, or in the North Carlin trend near Leeville, they are now testing the Leeville corridor between Carlin-East and the existing Leeville mine. And they hit, I believe they released 21 meters of 35 grams per ton. That's a 735 GT intercept. I mean, that would fall right into, some of the best intercepts coming out worldwide, right, in exploration, right? And that's, I think they're within a kilometer of the existing mine infrastructure. So I think what it's really highlighting is, testing these targets along strike and beneath these existing mine sites is having a lot of success. Barrack's doing it right now, both at the North Carlin trend. They're drilling 300 meters, I think, off of the edge of our boundary, on the western edge of our boundary at the Wren deposit. So they're looking for the down drop portion of the Wren system, which already has an established resource up shallower, but now they're looking on the other side of the fault zone. So, they're doing that in the North Carlin trend. They're having a lot of success at 4 Mile, which is just along trend of Swift. Obviously it's a ways down the trend, but it's in the same host rocks. So I think they're probably the most successful group in Nevada as far as going in and just testing some of these deeper targets. And when you have the deep pockets like them, it's, they can be very systematic about it. So we're hoping for us, we're having to rely heavily on our technical team to be, if you have a 50 square kilometer project, where's your best bet that you're going to have something that's going to show some success? And it's a little bit, you probably lose hair doing it. I think we lose a little hair picking, but it's a huge, for Swift, for example, we hit within where we expect to hit in the model, and it's altered, which is the most we can hope for, right? Like whether it's going to grade, these systems have large alteration halos around them. So just the fact that we're in altered rock, I don't know what the grade's going to be, but there is a good chance that it's going to carry grade in some form, whether it's extremely low grade background or even or higher, right? But what it allows us to do is then vector in, okay, well now we're hitting, where do we go next? Do we go along strike? Do we go deeper? Do we go to the next parallel fault system? So it's all things that you have to assess as the data comes in. So.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I've had a couple questions about Carlin-East and the decision to not drill there until a little bit later. And I think that ties in with what we were just describing. In part, you just said Barrack is drilling 300 meters from your border there, and they can, they have the deep pockets to do some systematic drilling. So I know you and I have chatted about how it's nice to be able to take advantage of some of the work that Barrack's doing. So I think that's part of the answer, right?
No, for sure. And they're de-risking our projects by continuing to drill in the general area, because they do release what their results are. We can get a good feel for where they're hitting and why they're targeting their targets the way they are. And I think, from a budgeting perspective, we budgeted 1,000 meters for Carlin-East this year, right? Just a quick follow-up program at the end of the year. But I don't want to just put one hole down anymore, right? They're having success. We know they're having good hits, like the 21 meters with 35 grams. And I want to be able to put 5 or 6 holes into Carlin-East next year and make sure that we're actually systematically testing some concepts. And one hole just doesn't do it for us. So we're better served sitting back, letting Barrack continue to do exploration. We can learn from what they're doing, and we're better off reallocating that capital to both Swift and Selena, which are showing a lot of very promising early stage results. We can then drive Swift and Selena to a bit stronger of a decision point for 2021 as well. So it has benefits on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, and balancing projects in a portfolio is the challenge and the benefit of having a portfolio of projects, right? Just one last question on Carlin-East before we move on to something else. Someone was saying, you mentioned the 2 holes that were drilled that hit lower plate at 700 plus meters that showed you that it was shallower than previously expected. What was assayed for in that rock, and what were the results, and what does it tell you?
You bet. So that one, we actually did full multi-element assays on everything. The second hole, 1902, was actually lost at about roughly 300 meters in the fault zone that we were targeting. So we didn't get into host rocks in that case, and we only had $1 million in the bank. Well, and quickly disappearing back then in 2019. So we ended up having to hold on that hole. But one hit lower plate. We drilled about I think about 50 meters of lower plate before the rig bottomed out in bad ground again. Again, it's very difficult drilling conditions in that area, which is part of the reason, again, why only one hole is a difficult thing to budget for, because you may lose that hole halfway down. But we hit 250 meters of about a 0.5 gram silver in the bottom of the hole. 0.5 gram silver, ppb level gold, anywhere from, I think it was about 30 ppm arsenic. So, antimony was elevated as well. So we were seeing elevated trace elements. We saw the silver, which was higher, which showed to us that we felt, okay, we're in the outer halo of potentially a larger system. We didn't feel that the results that we hit there were, hey, we just need to drill 100 feet to the north and we're fine. We think that we need to go to the crash zone, which is 1 kilometer to the north. That's where all of the geochemistry is really kind of clustering together along with the structural model. So, what we saw was, okay, we do have lower plate. It is weakly altered, but we're not into the core of the system yet. And so that's what stepping to the north will be.
I love the crash zone. That's like the best name for a structural target that I've ever heard.
We're pretty boring geo. So we just were like, what's happening? Well, everything's crashing together. So why don't we call it the crash zone? So, not very original.
Okay, someone was asking, let's get back to the Nevada part of the story. Someone noted that you are not originally an American, let alone a Nevada-an, but you hail from Manitoba, but yet you live down there. So give me a little bit of your Nevada background, and then what would you say about the importance of, you and Mike and your team, like living there in Nevada? What does that give you in terms of connections, knowledge, access to properties, things like that?
No, you bet. So I actually started my career in Red Lake, Ontario, working for Premier Gold Mines. So my career was a narrow vein, high grade geo. Essentially I worked underground and exploration for like 6 years. And so I came down to Nevada and had no idea what I was doing. And it took, it was kind of a hole. But the thing is Nevada, I think, has a lot of dogma associated with exploration. There's certain rock types you're in, and then certain rock types you don't look in. And there for 30 years, there was rock types that had every indication there was gold in them. and they didn't get drilled because there was, there was people at the top saying, no, there's no gold there. So when I came down, it was kind of, for us, I just applied I guess my structural background in geology to Nevada geology, and started testing different concepts that had nothing to do with, oh, there's gold, should be gold here because it's a Triassic age rock or a Devonian, etc. And we had success. So we made a discovery at Cove, found almost 2 million ounces at 12 grams. It's currently the highest grade undeveloped resource not owned by Nevada Gold Mines in Nevada. So, that was kind of an eye opener for me, was that you don't have to be looking in the classic rocks, and that's kind of how the idea for Ridgeline started. And Mike Harp's the exact same way. I mean, he was part of the gold standard team that found almost 5 million ounces there over the last 10 years. And Mike actually led the discovery of the North Dark Star, which was a target that frankly wasn't very well liked by previous operators and stuff, because there wasn't a good enough geochemistry anomaly. But Mike applied a different structural approach to it, and they made a discovery. So I think having an open mind and trying different concepts in Nevada is starting to bear fruit for majors and juniors like us. So.
And then what about living down there?
Oh yeah, sorry. Living down here, we've been down here for 8 years. I have a green card now. My wife and I moved down in 2012, and we got 2 kids and a dog and a cat, and we're pretty entrenched now. So, but living in Nevada is huge, because what we get is, I have prospectors, different landowners that I catch up with for a beer every once in a while, right? And they just say, hey, by the way, I staked this new ground, come take a look. And that's how we got to know the EMX team, actually, through kind of a relationship that way, which led to spinning these projects out. And I'm currently assessing multiple opportunities in Nevada for additional projects to bring into the portfolio right now that I would say probably are not, groups out of like Vancouver or Toronto. They're just flat out, they're not going to get access to these projects, right? Because we're able to go out, look at them in 2 days instead of 2 months, and we can make a decision pretty quick. So it's been a huge, huge advantage.
All right. A money question. You have enough money clearly for this year. Do you have a concept at this point of when you might need to raise money to get through 2021, or is it too dependent on results, or what do you say to that?
Here, our cash burn is quite low. So even with all the drilling we're doing this fall, we're going to end the year with about 4.4 million Canadian in the bank. So that would be more than enough to do another probably about an 8,000 meter program next year, as well as cover all of our overhead. But realistically, I would say fall of 2021, if if we're having some success, we'd probably be looking at raising. Now, if we have some success this fall and the stock performs well, and we can raise at a valuation that we like, then we'd absolutely look at adding to the treasury before the end of the year even. But it really just comes down to drill results. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, and then just to finish, let's return to the move that you made at Swift to change from RC drilling to core drilling. I think that's kind of it's a pretty interesting decision. So let's just talk about that again, because we all know we need to hear things more than once before we understand them as people in general. So yeah, I just want you to revisit that and give us that overview one more time.
Well, it wasn't an easy choice, because obviously we have the drilling contract that's RC, right? Our drilling contractor only has RC rigs. That's where we get our massive discount to our peers. But the issue is when you're drilling deep holes in Nevada, and you have groundwater, the mix of those two can be problematic for RC. So if you're drilling RC shallow like we do with Selena, we don't have any groundwater there. So I have 100% confidence that what we're drilling, the assays, etc., we're not getting any smearing of grades. It's all very, very quality data. When you get 2,000 feet down and you're below the water table, the fines, there's the whole Carlin type systems are just fine gold kind of flitting, just disseminated throughout the rock, right? So when you start smushing that rock apart and breaking it apart with a RC rig, and you have groundwater, all of those fines trickle down the hole. And so you can end up with, an intercept, let's just say hypothetically, you had 10 meters of 10 grams in an RC hole. You could then drill a core hole, and that might actually be 4 meters of 15 grams. Typically, you will have a narrower intercept that is higher grade with a core hole. And it's obviously representative of exactly what you're drilling, right? So for us, what we're seeing in the hole is exciting enough. There's enough alteration that we need to have core to get that. We need to be able to get that full picture to be able to make better decisions for future drilling programs going into 2021. So for us, it's pretty exciting. It's worth spending the money because we're hitting the right looking stuff. So.
You heard it here first. That's cool. That's exciting stuff for sure. Well, I think it's been almost an hour. I'm always aware of taking up people's time, so I think we'll wrap it up there. Chad, is there anything else you wanted to say before we sign off?
I think we covered a lot of it, but if anyone has any more interest in kind of checking out each of the projects, we have verify models for all 3 projects on our website at ridgelineminerals.com. We're constantly on Twitter, bothering all of our followers and LinkedIn as well, so with updates and stuff. So if you're interested in learning more about the company, subscribe to our list, follow us on Twitter and all that. We'll be keeping regular updates heading through the fall, but going to be a lot of news coming out through late October all the way through December, so should be exciting.
Perfect. Well, thanks for the presentation and the questions and answers today here, Chad. And of course, thanks to everyone who tuned in. We appreciate your interest. If you have, as Chad said, if you have any questions for him or any questions for me, we are both very easy to find at our websites. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks everyone for your interest, and we will see you here again soon, I'm sure. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.